Henry, I understand that he is tied up, and Representative Patterson is going to be.
I'll just introduce the bill before we have the pros and cons. Currently, there is no standard in the law for handling abortions, including close proximity to schools. This bill requires the State Department of Public Health may not issue or renew a license for an abortion clinic or reproductive center located within 2,000 feet of a public school.
Okay, we have 6 proponents and 2 opponents. We'll begin with Chris Horn.
I rise on behalf of my neighbors in the community in Huntsville, Alabama. I was born in Huntsville, not far from the Spartan Drive location. Many here today are talking about abortion, whether they're for abortion or they're against abortion. I'm supporting the children. And for those who already have that vote, I appreciate it. For those who don't, it's very simple. Can we allow another tragic event to happen? The ability to protect our kids is of great state interest. Our children who are walking on that sidewalk, playing on that playground, or going to school deserve to have an equitable environment for a great education, but they deserve to also have a safe environment. And that safe environment is not next to an abortion clinic or any business that has had a history, according to Judge Myron Thompson, of violence. If you're pro-life or you are pro-abortion, you may have been a part of that violent situation. There have been bombings, as Judge Myron Thompson has said last year when he reopened the clinic. There have been shootings. There has been all types of mayhem around the clinic. Violent protests. Our children should not be exposed to that. They should have an opportunity to go to school and be children. We don't have to have an excuse for adult decisions. I'm not asking you to make a decision about abortion. I'm asking you to make a decision whether or not you support children who are here, going to school. Many people have marched for those rights for equal opportunity for our children to be able to have a safe education. The city of Huntsville is still under desegregation and fighting for unitary status so that kids who don't live in environments that are harmful get the same type of quality of environment as others. But I don't want to wake up, and neither do any of you, to the news reports that a tragedy has happened at that location. It's not about whether you support abortion. It's not about whether you're against abortion. It's about whether you're going to stand up and vote for our children. And your careers depend on it. We don't want it to be said that we stood alone and did nothing the day after a tragedy. Today is the day that you can vote for our school children. Thank you.
Bob Beecher? Becker.
Madam Chairperson, members of the committee, I'm the chief trial attorney in the DA's office in Huntsville. The only reason I tell you that is because I'm more nervous speaking in front of you than I am when I give a closing argument in a capital murder case. I've never done anything like this before. I'm here as a parent of a child at AAA, which is the Academy for Academics and Arts. It's a magnet school in Huntsville that's located right across the street from the current location of the abortion clinic. I've been there for 21 years. I've been through 3 principals, and people have come to me over the years as kind of an unofficial spokesperson of the school. They know what I do, and they know I'm not afraid of talking most of the time. And so, you know, they say, what can we do about things? So I'm here representing teachers who've come to me, parents who have come to me who can't take off work, drive 3 hours down here, but especially I'm representing the children. Where the location was before, I would drive past the abortion clinic on my way to work and home every day. And I've been in that office for 25 years. I've seen the signs that are held up with pictures of aborted fetuses. I've seen the confrontations. You don't have to take Judge Thompson's word for it, or a circuit court judge in Huntsville, about how there's antagonistic behavior between these 2 groups, and it's never going to end. Just look at what you've had here before you. You've had people in supposedly a civilized hearing environment yelling at you about these issues. It's not going to go away. And this is something where the kids can look out the window and see this happening, and they have to. They can't turn away, because they drive by there every morning, and they drive by there every afternoon, and they will every day, from 4.5-year-olds to 14-year-olds. I'm just asking you to push this through so that they can have their abortion clinic someplace else. but not right across the street from a school that serves that age children. Thank you very much.
Cindy Adams.
Good morning and thank you. I'm here to speak to you today about HB 527. It's the government's job to assure that our school children are not only allowed a proper education, but to also assure their safety while attending our public schools. Advocates of abortion are constantly claiming that abortion clinic workers, their volunteer escorts, and parents are at risk from those who oppose abortion. Even Judge Thompson believes that an abortion clinic is a hostile, violent atmosphere and stated in his opinion on Planned Parenthood versus Luther Strange that although the vast majority of those who oppose abortion do so in nonviolent ways, this court cannot overlook the backdrop of this case, a history of severe violence against abortion providers in Alabama and the surrounding region. These abortion providers during this case were felt so frightened that they testified in open court only behind a black curtain, he said. One of the providers said that they worried for their own children because they're abortion providers. So my question is, if these abortion providers fear for their safety and the safety of their own children, then should we not also fear for the safety of our public school children of Alabama? The co-director of Alabama Reproductive Rights Advocates, Pamela Waters, stated online in an article about the violence that occurs at clinics that it's violence that I've experienced firsthand since starting a volunteer program at our local clinic in Huntsville in September 2010. We have been hit, pushed, shoved, called vile names, preached at through a bullhorn, and more. There is also well-documented violence against pro-lifers. There have been 2 murders, over 30 attempted murders, over 373 physical assaults, and over 400 death threats against pro-life advocates. The abortion advocates claim that there would not be an issue if the pro-lifers were not present at the clinics. They would love to have bubble zones to be implemented to reduce the interaction between the opposing groups, but the Supreme Court has ruled this unconstitutional. I ask that you protect our school children.
Carol Henderson.
Thank you. I'm Carol Henderson from Decatur. I'm a pro-life sidewalk counselor. I have stood at the sidewalk out front of abortion clinics for 14 years and have seen firsthand what goes on outside abortion clinics. First of all, there are high emotions at abortion clinics. The young women coming in for abortion, the men who bring them, the parents or the grandparents, the pro-abortion people that stand outside the abortion clinic, the doctors and workers inside, the pro-life people standing on the sidewalk of the abortion clinic, and even the cars that drive by. Over the years, we pro-lifers have been harassed and provoked by the pro-abortion people. Their tactics are profanity, physically and verbally. Smoke pots burning, sage, and whatever to try to smoke us out, loud boom boxes, harassment trying to provoke us to react to them so that they can get it on camera. Once, even the hazmat was called out because of a suspicious gel on the sidewalk where the pro-lifers stand, which turned out to be sugar and honey to attract ants, so the pro-lifers would have ants crawling all over them. Loud duck calls were used to harass and block out our efforts to speak to the girls as they walk in. Their most recent tactic is to park their car as close to the sidewalk as they can, even on the grass, and when we try to speak to the young women going in, they push the alarm on their key button to make their car honk, loud noise honking. The loud honking is could be heard in the classrooms across the street. The pro-aborts have also worn obscene costumes, dressed as a priest with a dummy of a little boy facing the crotch of the priest and sewn to his black cassock. I'm very concerned about witnessing the men who bring the young women to the abortion clinic, who sit outside in their cars and walk around the parking lots while she's having an abortion. I ask you please to support HB 527.
Joanne Cummings.
I stand in in opposition to HB 527, or as I would like to call it, the James Henderson will shut it down whatever he can bill. This gentleman has a long history of confrontations, including those at the Huntsville City Council, that have tedious sermons of testimony to prevent the Huntsville Clinic from operating as a legitimate business. Now that small business owner has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars moving to a new medical office facility to comply with the unneeded and excessive fire safety requirements of HB 57. There is nothing to distinguish the facility from any other business if it weren't for the anti-abortion protesters lining the sidewalk. If they weren't there, nobody would know it was an abortion clinic. It is ridiculous to establish a 2,000-foot exclusionary zone from a school, treating this business as if it were a residence of a sex offender, especially when the only people really creating the disturbing and violent environment or violence or explosions are those protesters against the clinics that they themselves are hoping to close. All of them. That's what they want.
Cheryl Ciamera.
I'm in support of this legislation. I think it's important to realize abortuaries are individual places where innocent human lives are being ended, and occasionally women are being injured. They're unlike other businesses. And to have that close to a public school, I think of it similar community standards like having a bar where liquor is served because the alcohol could be dangerous to children, or having a sex shop or pornography. And Dr. Randall O'Bannon has done extensive research on the location of abortion clinics and found that they're being targeted in poor Black and Hispanic communities in order to increase the abortions. It's a genocide of this population. And so that's another reason I think that community standards should be able to be withheld, and if the community does not, that the state has an interest in protecting public schools. There is a concern also in the Affordable Care Act with some of the places that wanted to place health clinics within public schools, and to have a revolving door from a public school as a referral system to a private business who makes not only financial profit as a private business from the ending of innocent human life, but also huge. Planned Parenthood has received $587 million a year annually in federal tax dollars, our money, yet they're still claiming to be nonprofit in that regard of getting that money, but they claim to be for-profit when it comes to this type of action. So I strongly support this legislation and ask you to protect the children from this could be predatory business. Thank you.
Roseland McDermott.
Regarding establishing new zoning for reproductive centers, if we want to keep Reverend Henderson's self-described bad behavior from the sight of children, then we should ban the behavior within 2,000 feet of women's clinics. Incidentally, I attended the Huntsville school in question. There are no windows. You can't hear anything in there. You have to go outside to hear anything like that. And they used to have some PE activities on that side of the building, but I believe they moved them to the interior where you're towards the neighborhood. And that doesn't happen anymore. So his zoning attempts have already been rejected in Huntsville and will not stand. They are in conflict with long traditions of zoning. There is another case of someone attempting to, this is just another case of someone attempting to save their own soul, and in the process assaulting the senses and common sense of women simply seeking health care plus the general public. These clinics provide more than just abortion care. The vast majority of women passing by, the graphic images and shouted insults are there for regular checkups and birth control. I know, I've been there, I've talked to the patients, I've been a patient. These are insults. They are insults. Insults to women's intelligence, insults to women's sovereignty, insults to public discourse, and insults to the public. Alabama deserves better than this.
Reverend James Henderson.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Reverend James Henderson, the curate at Ex-Nihilo Anglican Church in downtown Huntsville. I've been active in pro-life ministry for many years. I would have to say to Ms. Cummings and the other ladies who spoke against us that certainly we don't agree, but we do accept that as a measure of our effectiveness in saving the unborn. Let me speak both as a minister and also as an educator. I'm a master's degree educator who was licensed for many years to teach in Alabama public schools. I'm here to support all three bills today, but to speak in particular for HB 527. It's just a bad idea to have an abortion clinic with all that goes on across the street in front of a public school. Several people have referred to Judge Thompson's ruling. Let me refer to that too, because it documents much of the situation. He described another situation that has not been mentioned yet, and that is an administrator at a Huntsville abortion clinic so fearful that he's armed, afraid to go to the grocery store, goes to different grocery stores, behavior that I personally believe would be questionable. And here, even by Alabama law, it's not legal to have a weapon within 1,000 feet of a public demonstration. And here we stand the potential of an abortion clinic administrator armed and within pistol range of kids walking to and from school. Not a good situation. Let me just give you some quick snapshots that we recall over the last few years that tell you of the horror of the situation. Picture false complaints by the pro-abortion people with as many as 3 police cars with blue lights flashing rolling into the neighborhood. Graphic pictures of unborn babies and smoke pots. Thank you very much.
Mr. Patterson, do you have any closing
No,
comments?
Mr. Henry apologized. He's at a committee meeting and not just, used to the airport. He said he'd be here next week. We both.
Any members of the committee have any questions for me? Public hearing on House Bill 527 is complete. Any other business before the committee by any members? Motion to adjourn. So moved.